Before we begin, I want to remind you that the following stories involve real lockdown situations that were traumatic for those involved. If you're sensitive to content involving threats to safety in school environments, please proceed with caution. The modern school building stands as a contradiction. Bright, colorful posters promising safe spaces and positive learning environments hang on walls that now conceal reinforced lockdown shelters. Security cameras blend discreetly into ceiling corners, their red lights blinking silently as children pass below. Metal detectors frame entrances where parents once freely walked their children to class. This is the reality of education in America today, place of learning perpetually prepared for the unthinkable. Lockdown drills have become as routine as fire drills for students across the country, but there's a profound difference between rehearsing for danger and facing it firsthand. These are 3 stories from people who experienced the chilling reality when the announcement came, "This is not a drill." Westlake High School sits nestled against dense Oregon pines, the kind of small-town school where everyone knows everyone. The building itself is older, constructed in the late 1970s with long, echoing hallways and classrooms, still equipped with original chalkboards, despite the occasional smartboard upgrade. I was a junior, sitting in Ms. Peterson's English class except. Ms. Peterson wasn't there that day. Our substitute was Ms. Harris, a thin, nervous woman in her mid-40s with reading glasses that hung from a beaded chain around her neck. She had that characteristic substitute teacher, demeanor overly strict at first, then increasingly uncertain as she navigated unfamiliar classroom dynamics. Our class that day was the usual mix of students. The athletes clustered near the back windows, occasionally glancing outside at the baseball field where they'd rather be. The academic achievers occupied the front rows, notebooks already open and color-coded. I sat somewhere in the middle with my friends, neither outstanding nor troublesome enough to be particularly noteworthy. It was during our discussion of The Great Gatsby, when the intercom crackled to life, the sound immediately silencing 23 teenagers who'd heard enough lockdown drills to recognize what was coming. Attention all staff and students. This is not a drill. We are now in lockdown. I repeat, this is not a drill. The voice belonged to our principal, Mr. Thornton. Something in his typically confident baritone wavered slightly, just enough to send a chill through the room. Ms. Harris froze at the front of the class, a piece of chalk still pressed against the board. Her eyes widened behind her glasses, darting between the students and the door as if she'd forgotten which way to run. Sensing her hesitation, Jake Thompson stood up. Jake was our unofficial class leader quarterback, honor roll, the kind of kid who somehow managed to be both popular and decent. His normally casual demeanor had instantly transformed into something more focused, more adult. "Lights," he said firmly to Megan Chen, who sat closest to the switch. Megan, small, quick, and perpetually organized, was already moving. She flipped the lights off, plunging the room into the gray half-light that filtered through the blinds. Then she moved toward the door, reaching for the lock that would secure us inside. That's when we realized something was wrong. The lock mechanism was jammed, likely the result of years of pranks and misuse. Megan jiggled the handle, her sleek black ponytail swinging with the effort, but the lock wouldn't engage. Ms. Harris finally snapped out of her paralysis. We expected her to help, to take charge as she was supposed to. Instead, she grabbed her floral-patterned purse from the desk, clutching it to her chest like armor. "I need to check something," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could protest, she had unlocked the door, the same door we were desperately trying to secure, and slipped into the hallway. 23 stunned faces watched through the narrow door window as our supposed protector abandoned us. Jake immediately lunged for the door, pulling it shut. Several of us pushed desks against it, creating a makeshift barricade that seemed pathetically inadequate against whatever threat lurked in the building. Through the small window, we watched Miss Harris walking down the empty hallway, the fluorescent lights overhead casting harsh shadows on the green and white checkerboard floor tiles. Her phone was in her hand, her attention focused on the screen rather than her surroundings. The hallway stretched empty before and behind her, lockers standing like silent sentinels along the walls. Then suddenly, As if struck by an invisible force, she dropped to the ground. 2 police officers appeared above her, their dark uniforms stark against the institutional white walls, weapons drawn and pointed at our substitute teacher, who now lay face down on the cold floor. We later learned that a man with a hunting Nefia 12-inch serrated blade with a worn wooden handle had entered the school looking for his ex-girlfriend who taught sophomore biology. The man was tall and gaunt, with sunken eyes and 3 days' worth of stubble, wearing a heavy canvas jacket despite the mild spring weather. He never made it past the front office, but our substitute teacher could have easily walked right into him as she wandered the halls, oblivious to the danger. Ms. Harris never returned to substitute at our school again, and rumors circulated that she'd given up teaching altogether after that day. I wouldn't blame her. Some lessons are too harsh to learn on the job. Ridgeview High is one of those modern schools built with security and Mind key card access at every entrance, security cameras in common areas, classroom doors that automatically lock when closed. The architecture is all sleek lines and open spaces intended to eliminate hiding places, with lots of natural light streaming through impact-resistant windows. Despite these precautions, no architect had solved the inherent vulnerability of school bathrooms' private spaces that can't be constantly monitored. The bathrooms at Ridgeview were particularly spacious, with 6 stalls along one wall, a bank of sinks opposite, and large mirrors that reflected the institutional blue-gray tile that covered every surface. I was a freshman, still finding my way through the social hierarchy of high school. Not quite popular, but not an outcast either, just another face in the crowd with my unremarkable brown hair and standard-issue backpack covered in band logos and friend signatures. During third period advanced algebra with Mr. Iesa, former engineer with a no-nonsense attitude and a surprising talent for explaining complex concepts, I asked to use the restroom. Mr. Reyes had a strict one-person-at-a-time policy and handed me the laminated hall pass without pausing his explanation of polynomial functions. The hallways were silent and empty as I made my way to the bathroom, my footsteps echoing slightly on the polished concrete floors. I had just entered the stall when the lockdown alarm sounded 3 short bells, followed by 1 long one, their electronic wail reverberating off the tile walls with an eerie, amplified quality. My heart dropped. I knew I should return to class immediately, but the rules were clear. Once lockdown begins, you seek shelter in the nearest secure location. The bathroom, with its large windows near the ceiling and 2 separate entrances, was definitely not secure. I was about to leave when I heard the heavy bathroom door open. Footsteps low, deliberate, unfamiliar echoed on the tile floor. Not the quick, shuffling steps of a student rushing to hide, but something more measured, more adult. I pulled my feet up onto the toilet seat and held my breath, my knees tucked tightly against my chest as I tried to make myself as small as possible in the confined space of the metal stall. The footsteps moved slowly around the bathroom, accompanied by the slight squeak of what sounded like tactical boots on the clean tile. Then I heard a man's voice mutter, something unintelligible. It definitely wasn't a teacher, I recognized. The voice was too deep, too rough, with a slight rasp like someone who had once smoked heavily. I remained absolutely still, trying not to make a sound. The footsteps approached my stall. Through the gap beneath the door, I could see the shadow of someone standing just outside solid black tactical boots, the hem of dark pants. My hands were trembling so badly I had to press them against the cool metal stall walls to keep them from shaking. The person tried the handle on my stall door. It rattled but held firm. "Anyone in here?" The voice was gruff, unfamiliar. I said nothing, pressing my palm against my mouth to ensure not even my breathing could be heard. "Police. If someone's in here, identify yourself now." I still said nothing. We had been warned about this exact scenario in drills that an intruder might claim to be police to flush out hiding students and staff. Then I heard radio static and another voice coming through it, garbled but official sounding. The person outside my stall spoke into what I now realized was actually a police radio. I could make out phrases like "clearing the West Wing" and "bathroom secure." Still, I didn't move or speak until I heard multiple sets of footsteps enter the bathroom and recognized my principal's voice. "Doctor." Morgan, a former military officer with close-cropped silver hair and a commanding presence that somehow managed to be both intimidating and reassuring. "We have a student unaccounted for," she was saying to the officer. "Freshman, likely in this area." It turned out a parent with a restraining order, a large man with a faded neck tattoo and anger management issues, according to school gossip, had come to the school attempting to take their child. The man had somehow bypassed the front office security checkpoint, and the school immediately went into lockdown when they couldn't locate him after he entered the building. I spent 47 minutes hiding in that bathroom stall, the longest 47 minutes of my life. By the time I was escorted back to class, my legs had gone numb from maintaining the same cramped position for so long, and it took several minutes before I could walk normally again. Pinewood Community College is spread across several acres of former farmland, its buildings a mix of 1960s concrete structures and newer, more architecturally interesting additions. The library sits at the center of campus, a 3-story building with floor-to-ceiling windows that offer views of the surrounding oak trees and carefully maintained lawns. Inside, the library is a study in contrasts. Outdated fluorescent lighting illuminates sleek modern furniture, and ancient reference materials share shelf space with digital media stations. The evening I'm about to describe, the space was typically empty for a weeknight, just a few dedicated students scattered throughout the vast open floor plan. I was a part-time student, taking evening classes while working days at a local insurance office. At 28, I was older than most of my classmates, more focused perhaps, but also more visibly tired, often arriving to class still dressed in my work clothes with coffee in hand. That night, I was tucked away at a back table, surrounded by reference books and my laptop, working on a research paper. The only other people around were the librariana woman in her 50s, with prematurely white hair styled in a practical bob and reading glasses, perched on the end of her nose, and 2 other students. A young man wearing a red university sweatshirt who seemed to be cramming for an exam, and a woman about my age with curly brown hair who was focused intently on her laptop screen. The library was silent, except for the occasional typing and the soft hum of the heating system. Outside, darkness had fallen, making the windows reflect our activities back to us, rather than showing the grounds beyond. It was in this quiet, focused atmosphere that the campus alert system suddenly blared through the speakers mounted near the ceiling. "Active threat on campus. Seek shelter immediately." "This is not a drill." The message repeated itself, the mechanical voice echoing through the cavernous space. We all froze momentarily, looking up as if the source of danger might reveal itself from the sound system. The librarian Ms. Patterson, according to her name tag, reacted first. With surprising speed for someone her age, she moved to the front doors and locked them, then gestured for us to follow her. "Media room," she said firmly, already moving toward the back of the library. "No windows, solid door." The red sweatshirt student grabbed his backpack, leaving his books scattered across the table in his haste. The curly-haired woman closed her laptop with a snap and followed, keeping her computer clutched tightly to her chest. The media room was essentially a glorified storage closet that had been converted to house film viewing equipment, an outdated projector mounted to the ceiling, a pull-down screen on the far wall, and several chairs arranged in rows. But Miss Patterson was right, it had no windows and a heavy door with a deadbolt that she quickly secured behind us. In the sudden darkness, the blue glow of our phone screens illuminated 4 tense faces as we huddled there, checking for emergency alerts or news. The red sweatshirt student who introduced himself as Tyler mentioned he had an accounting exam in 15 minutes. The curly-haired woman Aisha is attempting to text her husband, who was supposed to pick her up after her study session. After about 20 minutes of anxious waiting, our phones simultaneously chimed with a new alert. "False alarm. All clear. Resume normal activities." Relief visibly washed over Tyler's face. He checked his watch and mentioned again his upcoming exam, this time with more urgency. "Ms. Mardes." Patterson, however, frowned at her phone screen, the light accentuating the deep worry lines on her forehead. "Let's wait for campus security to come by," she suggested, her voice carrying the weight of authority despite her small stature. Better safe than sorry. But Tyler was already gathering his things. Look, I've got Professor Daniels for advanced accounting, and he locks the door exactly at start time. No exceptions. If I miss this exam, that's 30% of my grade down the drain. After some back and forth, with Tyler growing increasingly agitated and checking his watch every few seconds, he finally convinced Ms. Patterson to unlock the door. His parting words as he left, it said, "All clear, we're fine," hung in the air behind him. Aisha, Ms. Patterson, and I remained in the media room, still uneasy despite the reassurance on our phones. Ms. Patterson reactivated the deadbolt, muttering something about better to be paranoid than dead. About 10 minutes later, we heard something from the main library area, the unmistakable sound of the front doors being forced open, followed by heavy footsteps moving systematically through the space. Through the narrow gap beneath the door, we could see flashlight beams sweeping across the library floor, the harsh white light cutting through the darkness in disciplined patterns. Then came loud, authoritative voices. "Police! Anyone here? Make yourself known!" Ms. Patterson called out, her voice stronger and steadier than I would have expected given the circumstances. Soon we were face to face with fully armed police officers in tactical gear bulletproof vests, helmets with visors, and weapons held at the ready. They looked surprised to see us huddled in the small room. "Didn't you get the evacuation order?" one asked, a tall officer with a neatly trimmed beard visible beneath his helmet visor. We showed them our phones with the "all clear" message. The officers exchanged concerned looks, their expressions shifting from confusion to something more alarming. One radioed in, "We've got civilians in the library," who received an incorrect "all clear." It turned out the false alarm message had been sent by mistake, or, more accurately, had been sent by someone who shouldn't have had access to the system. There actually was an armed person on campus, a young man in a dark hoodie and backpack, who had been spotted near the science building carrying what appeared to be a weapon. Tyler, the student who had left for his exam, had been intercepted by police in the hallway between buildings and safely evacuated. The campus was on actual lockdown for 3 more hours, while police conducted a thorough search of every building. Later, we learned that someone had hacked into the emergency alert system and sent out the false "all clear" message, possibly to draw people out of hiding. They never caught the person responsible, nor did they find any armed intruder despite multiple reports. But campus security protocols were completely overhauled after this incident, and the emergency alert system now requires multi-factor authentication from 2 separate administrators before any message can be sent. That night in the library was over a year ago, but I still check for the nearest exits whenever I enter a classroom or public space, and I never trust a single "all clear" message anymore. Sometimes I wonder about Tyler, if he ever thinks about how close he came to walking into an unknown danger because of an accounting exam that, in the grand scheme of things, meant nothing at all. These stories serve as reminders that school lockdown procedures exist for a reason, and following them can literally be a matter of life and death. Always take lockdowns seriously. Verify information through official channels, and remember that staying hidden and quiet might save your life. If you enjoyed these stories, remember to like and subscribe for more disturbing true stories.